Welcome to Backyard Productions. My name is Dan Chester, the Studious Gamer, and this is Studious Gaming. Spider-Man is out today on the PS4, or by the time you're watching this, it's probably been out a while. But it's got me pumped up for my favorite superhero. The Spider-Man has a long history of being in video games.
Is this more action than even Spider-Man could handle?
Some of them aren't very good, some of them are great. I want to take a look back at some of those old games. I'm going to start on the handheld, looking at some of the 2D side-scrolling games before we move on to the 3D games. Today we're talking about Spider-Man 2000 on the Game Boy Color. I'm playing this on the Retron 5 because I want to play it on the big screen in HD. But the first time I played it was on the Game Boy Color, but this screen is so tiny. And there's no save states. Save states P. But Maisie likes to play it on the Game Boy Color. But the screen's so tiny and it's not backlit. The year is 2000 and Spider-Man came out on the PS1 and N64 and the PC. This game is regarded as one of the best Spider-Man games ever to come out, and it set a standard for Spider-Man. I remember getting this game in a cereal box when the Sam Raimi movie came out. That shit was crazy. Everyone loves that game, but I didn't even know about this handheld port. The story in this is very much the same. Doc Ock and Carnage are the main villains, and you have to fight all these other villains to get to him. The greatest part about this game are the cutscenes. The pixel art is beautiful. It looks like a comic or a cartoon. And the dialogue makes sense. Everything seems like what the characters would say. The story makes sense. The villains you fight in this game are pretty cool too. There's Lizard. There's... Who else is there? There's Venom, Lizard, Hobgoblin, and then of course there's Doc Ock and Carnage. And at the end they morph together to form Dr. Carnage. I don't know if that's the official name for them, but I like that. This game is a side-scroller, just like all the other handheld games. This one definitely learned a lot from the games that came before it. Most notably, the Amazing Spider-Man games on the Game Boy. The controls for those games suck. The controls here are much more improved. But the controls here still aren't perfect. When you jump straight up, and when you're trying to get to a platform that's a little bit over, it's so difficult to do. You can never get Spider-Man to do what you want him to do. You would think that, he can do whatever a spider can, but Spider-Man can't do nothing. Ain't got nothing on them spiders. What? And he sticks to the damn wall all the time. Sometimes it's hard to tell what is a background and what is in the foreground. So sometimes you're just jumping around and all of a sudden you stick to a wall and then you get beat up by bad guys. Or those guys that throw the glow sticks at you. Spidey, in this game you can do a whole bunch of moves, which kind of reminds me of Tomb Raider on the Game Boy Color. There's limited buttons on the Game Boy Color. There's only these two, start and select, and the D-pad. So they make use of all of them, and it's pretty interesting what they think of.
Which game? Tomb Raider or Spider-Man?
In both games. The first time I played this game, the first thing I did was swing all the way across the level, and then you get to the docks, and I kept on swinging, and then eventually I found a health upgrade, and then I realized I was totally lost. Where do you go from there? I got really frustrated trying to swing all the way back to the city, so the first time I played it, I just quit right there. The game is split up into all these different locations, which are all accessible from the city, which is the main hub. You have the freedom to go anywhere you want from the beginning, but there are some events that have to happen first in order for you to access some of these places, which is kind of like Batman Arkham series, which the PS4 game is constantly compared to. There's a leveling up system in the game, so when you hit select, you get to see this little menu that tells you what level you're at. In the game, there are 6 levels. Each one gives you better attack power and defense. So when you fight bad guys, they give you points, and the early bad guys give you 1 point, and later on, like these dudes on the docks, they give you 4 points. The leveling up definitely makes it feel like you're making progress when you're going throughout the game, and it definitely seems like you're stronger and you can take more hits, and that's really cool. That makes this stand out from some of the other Spider-Man games. Also, when you level up, you sometimes get new moves. So this means that you actually have to fight in the game. And I guess that's smart because it's so easy to just swing by everything. Also, this menu has awesome music. Just take a listen to some of these jams. What? Well, after a while, I felt like I was fighting forever. So I checked the menu, and I realized that I was only at level 2. So then I went back to the city, and I just walked back and forth. Fought every enemy that I found until I got substantially leveled up. And then I moved on with the game. So throughout the game, there's a couple secret items that you can find. They kind of look like tokens. They have them in a lot of Spider-Man games, but when you find them, they give you more health, and they actually allow you to get full defense and attack power. And also, I think that there's one that gives you a new move. I think that you find the web shield, which is like the only power-up that actually transfers over from the console version of the game. And finding these things are super important because the final boss, so difficult. So after I got lost and leveled up, I finally found out where I was supposed to go, which is this decrepit-looking building in the middle of the city. You climb to the top, and you're trying to find Dr. Connors, but instead, Venom. So Venom pops up about 3 times in the game, and each time you fight him the same way. He just gets a little bit harder each time. And online, the internet tells me that you're supposed to run to the corner, and then he jumps, and he's not supposed to hurt you. But this never works for me. So I never really figured out a good technique for fighting Venom. I just got lucky. And he dies.
From old age?
You just wait, and then he dies of old age. So after you defeat Venom, in the cutscene, they mention the subways. You gotta pay attention to stuff like that, you see. Otherwise, you won't know where to go. So I wish that they told me where to go in the beginning of the game. In later games, like in the next Spider-Man game, they do make sure that you know where you're going. I think that they realized that it was kind of hard to figure out in this game. I don't even want to talk about that. So once you go into the subway, you go down into the sewers. And all of the issues with this game come to the forefront in the sewers. All of the issues with traversal, jumping, you get stuck to walls all the time. One of the big issues is with the respawn of enemies. They'll respawn as soon as they leave the screen. So if you walk over to the left a little bit and you fight an enemy, walk over a little bit more to the left and go back to the right, the enemy's going to be right there again, as if you never beat them up. So when you're traversing the sewer, you're constantly getting stuck in a dead end, going back, and then you have to fight the same enemies over and over again. And then there are these bats, which are sort of notorious in this game. I hate flying enemies in any side-scrolling games. For some reason, these side-scrollers, they insist on having flying enemies. I think I hate flying enemies in all of the games, like the harpies in God of War, and freaking. I mean, I think what I'm thinking about is like DMC, Devil May Cry. They're these flying dudes.
I know what you really were thinking of. You're thinking of that cloud in Super Mario that drops the spiky guys on
That
you.
fucking cloud in Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, no, that's a pain in the ass. This game reminds me a lot of Ninja Gaiden on the NES, and the birds are, and the bats are one of them. Actually, there's birds throughout the game. There are these pigeons, and then there are these beach pigeons, and then there are these bats, and I hate them all. I hate them. So what makes the bats worse than all of these other enemies is that they swarm around you, and you're just trying to climb up a wall or something, and when you're climbing on a wall you can't defend yourself. And then so when you're on top of something, on the ground, I would just stand still and punch at the air until I defeat all of the bats, and then I can finally move on. So a lot of times in the sewers I would just take the damage and try to find my way around and just let these birds hurt me. They're not even birds. Yeah, definitely one of the issues is how Spider-Man sticks to the ground. I don't know why I don't even know how sometimes I'm sticking to the ground. It happens in all of the Spider-Man games. You'll attach to the ground, and then in this game you would think that you can press A to jump, and then you would, lift off the ground, but the way to stand is by pressing up. And then when you're on a wall, you don't press over, you have to press jump. It makes no sense at all. And so when you're in the sewers, you have to master the nuances of the control. It's actually incredibly sophisticated. But in the sewers, there's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of health, and you'll level up quite a bit, so it's not a total waste of time. Eventually, you'll find the lizard, and then after fighting the lizard, it's nighttime, and you have to go to the docks on purpose. And then you fight Venom again, and then you go into the Hobgoblin's warehouse, and this level is incredibly difficult. And if you've managed to get this far, and you're playing it legitimately on the Game Boy Color, using passwords and all that, this is probably the level that breaks the game, because
That breaks you.
that breaks you, not just the game, but it breaks you, because you have to defuse all these bombs. Well, I guess if you use the password when you start, you can just keep on typing in the password, but then that means you have to exit out of the game, type in the password. It's a hassle. Yeah, this level gave me some trouble, mostly because of how bad the controls are. Navigating is hard, and you have to locate all of these pumpkin bombs to defuse them, and you have to do it in a time limit, otherwise the whole place explodes. That means you have to find them all and execute the run perfectly. And even if you have save states, it doesn't help much. Then you fight the goblin and have to go back to the sewers. And this is where you finally get to the secret lab. And I thought this part was going to be the end of the game. I thought, you find the door and then you would go right into the final boss battle. But actually, there's a whole other level. And this one is confusing just like the sewers, but it has symbiotes. 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 And this one has symbigotes. The level design is the worst part about the game because of how confusing it is. Sometimes I feel like I should draw myself a map to find my way around the level. I would need to draw myself a map to Spider-Man's heart. Yeah, it's really hard to figure out where you're gonna go. What? In life, it's hard to find out where you're going. And this game, it's just a metaphor for that. You know, the level design is just so labyrinthine, just like life. But in the lab, there's all these obstacles, so it's a little bit harder than in the sewers. You can't actually take the damage. You will die trying to find your way around. So I found the end totally by accident. I was just roaming around, and eventually the cutscene started, sort of in the middle of action. I didn't even realize that I was on the right trail. I thought I had been at this place a million times. So after the cutscene, there's 3 boss battles in a row. You have to fight Doc Ock, and then Carnage, and then Dr. Carnage. Well, actually, they're very hard if you try to do them like legitimately, but each one has like a really simple exploit. Well, Carnage you can defeat by getting up on the ceiling and then shooting web balls at him. At this point, if you've leveled up, your web balls have like impact. You like that, web balls? It's funny. And then with Doc Ock and Dr. Carnage, you shoot them on the ground with web balls. And that's it. And once you've done that, you beat the game. After defeating the bosses, the credits are kind of cute. Activision, I believe it's Activision. They put together a whole bunch of cool pictures so that, you know, pictures are cool. Games are cool. All in all, it's a good game, and I would definitely suggest it. If you're hardcore into collecting Game Boy Color games, or if you're hardcore into Spider-Man, collecting Spider-Man games, this is a must play. This isn't my favorite game. I think it's my second favorite of the handheld Spider-Man games. If you have a Retron 5 or some other emulator, I would definitely suggest it. I'm already definitely suggesting it, but if you have a Retron 5, I definitely suggest it. If you're playing it legitimately on the Game Boy Color, there's a password system, and the checkpoints are pretty generous. There's a checkpoint before every boss battle, so that cuts the frustration down, and a less frustrating game is a better game, as we all know. As the old adage goes. Back to antiquity, they would say that. Pretty sure that's not made up. Thank you for watching. Next week we're talking about Spider-Man 2 on the Game Boy Color. Sinister 6. Bye. Make sure you subscribe and share and like. Tell your mom there's a new series in town and it's got its name written all over her. I've been fighting forever. I must be super leveled by now. What? I need to be strong. I need to be able to take it. Let the training begin. Alright, now I'm ready to face any enemy. That's the one where you just go